The state of the media in Uganda remains worrying and characterized by violations of media freedom and attack on journalists.
My right, my profession. My right, my profession.
For a long period, it has been riddled with sustained violations of media freedom and attacks against journalists by security forces. The media space has been gradually shrinking due to numerous attempts by state actors to limit media coverage of the prevailing political, social, and economic circumstances in the country. On 12 January 2015, Andrew Rwanga, a WBS television journalist, together with other journalists, were covering a demonstration by a group of unemployed youths who were heading to police headquarters in Naguru to deliver a letter to the Inspector General of Police, General Kale Kaihura. The letter was seeking to permit them to hold rallies in different parts of Kampala. The then DPS of Old Kampala Police Station, Joram Mwesije, fell down while trying to disperse the protesters, and when he rose up, he meted his anger towards Rwanga, who was covering the protests.
I went to cover a story of unemployed youth. They started the press conference, and immediately after the press conference there was a procession, and they demanded to deliver a letter to the IGP's office. Police intercepted and tried to arrest the leaders of the unemployed youth. In the process, I became the victim of the day because the police officer by the names of Mr. Joram Mwesije turned on me and he started assaulting me several times on my head and the spine. In that process, I didn't know that my spine was badly damaged. I had to do an operation, which I didn't do on time because I didn't have money at the moment. And when I requested police to help me pay up my medical bills in Zambia, they were adamant and they didn't respond.
His spine was damaged, went through several operations, and also lost his job while bedridden.
In that process, actually, I lost even employment because when I was sick, I was laid off.
As a media rights organization at Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda, we have witnessed an escalation of attacks on journalists, taking very different forms from physical aggression to harassment, intimidation, inducement of media owners and key media personalities in order to make sure that there is conducive reporting in particular line, and that happens to the detriment of freedom of expression. It's imperative for us to note that freedom of expression and freedom of speech is not about journalists fishing for stories and getting it out there to the citizenry, but it's about the citizens being able to internalize, crystallize, and make informed decisions about issues that surround them. If they are not able to do that, we cannot talk of having a full-fledged freedom of expression and a conducive environment for the media.
Police never wants you to cover what is on ground, what is the truth, because they're abusing human rights.
After the 2016 general elections, many journalists tested the brutality of security forces. Photojournalist Isaac Kasamani of the AFP, an international news agency, was pepper-sprayed by police while taking pictures of police arresting former Forum for Democratic Change presidential candidate Dr. Chiza Besigye from his residence in Wakiso district. Another journalist, Abeka Lubowa, survived narrowly, while other journalists were blocked from accessing the news scene.
After the 2016 elections, when we were in Kasangat at Dr. Chiza Besigye's home, we were roughed up by police because they never wanted us to cover what was happening at the home of Dr. Besigye. But we insisted because we were like, this is our job and this is what we do. So police was like, okay, if you don't leave, something bad is going to happen. After a few minutes, they bundled us up. They pulled our clothes, they put us into a police van. The moment I entered into that van, there is a man in plain clothes who boxed me. He punched me into the stomach.
We come in as prescribed by our mandate to defend and protect rights of journalists in the country. So it is within our configuration that we have to be there for journalists. But also it is in the wider interest of the entire media fraternity and the country at large that there has to be press freedoms in the country. And that is central to why we come in to address some of these abuses that we are seeing and the violations that we see in the country. So we come in through multiple interventions, and we try by all means to have them anchored around what is happening in the Ugandan context. So at times it will require us to engage the perpetrators. It would also require us to directly train and create platforms of learning for journalists so that their mindsets kind of change to be able to handle the situation as it is.
Among the cases we received in the year 2018 was that of Twaha Muchibi, a journalist working with NBS TV, who was assaulted in Chengera, a Kampala suburb, while conducting an interview with leaders of the notorious Chifesi gang, a gang which claims to be behind the robberies and murders of several innocent Ugandans in collaboration with the police.
Storage, the batulidde.
Well, it was around 11 in the morning. We had gone to cover a story of thugs who had earlier on confessed that they work with police in carrying out their dirty work. We went to do another story on these people and see how they were doing their work. When you reach, it took like 15 minutes. Police bounced on us and they started beating us. I tried to explain to them that I'm a journalist, shouting actually. I shouted that I'm a journalist, but they couldn't leave me. They kept on beating me everywhere. I think in Uganda, police hates media. Because it's not only me that they beat up. They have been doing it for years. But in my case, I think police was following me because I had done stories earlier where these people were confessing that they were doing dirty works, they were criminals, and they are doing works with police. Journalists in Uganda will have to come together and fight police brutality because it is worse, but unless we come together, there's no way police will change.
Since then, Twaha chose not to report any police or security-related story following the torture he was subjected to.
From that day, I think I'll never do security stories again because I hate police, I hate security.
In the same year, events in Arua district most notably stand out. During the by-elections for Arua municipality in August, a number of journalists faced brutality in the hands of security forces. NTV journalists Herbert Ziwa and Ronald Mwanga were pounced on and beaten by officers as they reported live the events in Arua. James Akena, a photographer working for the foreign news agency Reuters, was beaten by soldiers, arrested and detained for several hours as he covered the Free Bobi Wine political protests in Kampala. His equipment was confiscated and his life has never fully recovered. Alex Esagala, a Daily Monitor photographer, was injured when 2 tear gas canisters were thrown at him and exploded on him while covering the Makerere University students' protests against the 15% tuition increment.
That day we were in Chikoni, which is next to Makerere University, and most of the students stay in that area, Chikoni. The situation was intense, but we journalists, we had to be there to show what was happening. We took pictures, we got the videos and everything. And then some 2 students collapsed because these police officers were firing direct tear gas direct into the halls of residence. So when the 2 students collapsed, I went at a distance to take a picture when they were being carried, as we were taking them to hospital. One of the police officers fired a tear gas canister. To me, it hit my chest, and then it fell under my legs. It exploded. Then when I tried to jump up, it burnt me.
Many journalists have gone through a lot, and this explains the state of media in Uganda.
Instead of police protecting us when we are in the riots, they instead target us. Because giving the recent example at Makerere University, while we were covering the demonstrations by the students, the demonstration which lasted for over 1 week, we saw police mishandling journalists. Majority of them tortured us, they tear gassed us. They directed the canisters directly to journalists. Even when we had introduced ourselves. Of course, when we were covering, they didn't want the media to bring out whatever was happening at Makerere. And some of them don't want to see us when they are doing their bad side of the stuff they always do.
Brutality is just a piece of the many violations that journalists face and the media is facing in pursuing its cause, such as torture. You can mention of the arbitrary arrests, the threats and harassment that is constant, and that one is very much in relation to the Communications Commission, the Uganda Communications Commission, which has been like the architect of arrests by the directives it gives to some of the actors in the state.
The media is under attack, and the situation is likely to remain volatile for the foreseeable future. It also seems apparent that there is deliberate ploy by the security agencies to target the journalists at the scenes of these protests to prevent them from reporting and informing the public of the prevailing circumstances.
It all points to one thing, that the media is still under siege, that the media is not free to execute its full mandate without repercussions, which are very dire. to the journalists doing this particular work. It really brings out the very reason that we must really stand up as key actors in the development of the media and defending freedom of expression and the media, to really work extremely hard to make sure that we push back, make sure that we have an environment that gives room for investigative journalism to flourish, for people to be able to engage through the media, for all dissenting views to be given space within the media. Where we are now, the media is only a shadow of what it should be.